Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Mr. Oladejo Lamikanra joins us now. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria, a legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
What a scenario we have in our hands in the country at the moment. Well, INEC says, well, they are equally confused. They're going to have a meeting today to decide what will eventually happen. The police has gone ahead. The convention clearly in Port Harcourt will not hold because as at 4 a.m. our colleague told us they have moved in and sealed the place. Conflicting court judgments, the police described it. What do you think is going on?
I think we need to start from a clear understanding of court orders. There is a distinction between a judgment which determines the rights of parties finally and a ruling or an interim order or an interlocutory order, which are generally orders made in course of a proceeding. It doesn't decide the final rights of parties. It just tends to hold the status quo pending the determination of the final rights. So what I'm saying is this: a judgment has superiority over a mere order or ruling, interlocutory or interim. In the case that we are faced with, the scenario we are faced with, there have been at least 3 judgments, and they are unanimous, and they are against Senator Alimodu Sheriff. And he is appealing some of them, particularly the Liman judgment. He is on appeal against that decision. And the same person who is on appeal instituted this action before the Honorable Justice Abang. Now, I do not have a precedent on that. A party who is aggrieved, who's appealed a decision that is against him, whilst on appeal, decides to file an action before a high court, the object of which is to procure orders to conflict with previous decisions already handed out in a judgment. This is totally strange to my experience as a legal practitioner. Totally strange. But
this decision by Justice Abang, I mean, you saw in the reports, my colleague also highlighted the clear words of Justice Abang. He was visibly angry that how could Port Harcourt have intervened in this matter? In other words, he clearly says, look, this case has been instituted here. If it's before me, I have to deliver judgment. And he lambasted the judge in Port Harcourt. What do we make of that?
Well, 2 judges having a go at each other is not a situation I, as a legal practitioner, can comment about. But I can say this. Before the proceedings presided over by Justice Abang commenced, there is a subsisting judgment that has not been overturned.
The Senator Benobi case, or which one is that?
No. That is the matter PDP against Senator Alimodu Sheriff, the decision of Honorable Justice Liman of the Federal High Court, Port Harcourt. That is the predicate for the decision of Justice Wakila. The whole purport of the judgment of Justice Wakila is to actually give effect to the judgment of Justice Liman. Every court of law has a constitutional duty to protect and to preserve and to enforce its own judgment. What Justice Wakila did is actually in consonance with his constitutional duties. I really do not see any merit in the strictures being passed on him publicly by a brother judge. That is also something that I am not familiar with. Judges berating a judge in a manner that basically leaves the public wondering what's going on here. These are not antecedents that I am familiar with.
So in this situation where you've said here that a judgment supersedes a ruling.
Yes.
Or an order,
yes,
as the case may be. Now, in this case now, the police has gone ahead to seal up the convention venue, which is supposed to start today. Is the police in order? Because the police PRO just left our studios and he talked about the police just there to ensure that there's safety of lives and property, that they're only doing their job. And they have the two court, how would I call it now, court judgment and court ruling. So he says they are doing their job.
I assume, sir, that the police have a legal department staffed by lawyers like myself. If they avail themselves of the advice of their lawyers, it shouldn't be difficult for them to come to the conclusion that the decision handed down by the Honorable Justice Liman takes precedence. Senator Alimodu Sheriff is appealing that decision. The Honorable Justice Abang is not a justice of the Court of Appeal. He's a judge of the Federal High Court. So when you proceed from that standpoint, where you are pitching a judgment against an interlocutory ruling, there is no doubt it is a settled position in legal practice that a judgment supersedes a ruling, order, interim or interlocutory.
Okay. Just to educate us, legally speaking here, when you're a case and a judgment's been given and you are appealing,
yes, sir,
what should the parties involved in that case be doing?
In this case, Senator Alimodu Sheriff is an appellant before the Court of Appeal.
Does that...
He should pursue his complaints against the Liman judgment before the Court of Appeal. That is the proper venue. He ought not to go before another high court seeking orders, the object of which is to contradict an existing judgment. You don't do that. Particularly when you are an appellant waiting for the Court of Appeal to decide your rights, whether the Liman judgment is right, whether the Liman judgment is wrong. You are before the Court of Appeal. So what are you doing before another court, raising issues that are already constituted in your appeal before the Court of Appeal?
So since he is before the Court of Appeal,
yes, sir,
should the PDP have waited for the Court of Appeal to vacate its own or to give its ruling before it goes on?
A judgment of a court of law is valid until it is set aside. And in this case, if there had been a stay of execution of the Liman judgment, PDP ought ordinarily in that event to have waited. In this case, there is no stay of execution. There is no injunction from the Court of Appeal saying that, look, until we, Court of Appeal, decide on this appeal, let all parties sheath their swords and wait. No such order has emanated from the Court of Appeal. And as it stands, only the Court of Appeal, now ceased of the decision handed down by Liman, only that court can stay proceedings. Proceedings haven't been stayed. Injunction has not been given. The judgment of Liman stands as it stands now, completely unopposed.
But this is a bit tricky because lawyers will tell you that if they're defending their client and then the Court of Appeal for a particular matter, it would be strange for them not to get a stay, especially if the PDP were to go ahead and then hold the convention. That automatically destroys the rest if he is to wait for the appeal.
What is the rest here? I think we need
the PDP
to...
holding that convention.
We need to... Not really. We need to... What was the Liman judgment about? It was about the supremacy